Ladies and gentlemen, continue with our program for this afternoon. May I please have the pleasure of inviting next panelist for our third session on the global food crisis amidst COVID-19, Mr. Kamaru Barin Harun, Professor Syed Azam Ali, His Excellency Ambassador Dr. Hamid, Ms. Ho Yung Ming Ming. Mr. Kamaru, can you start the session, please?
Hello?
Hello. Hello.
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, my name is Hamid. We're trying to get the video.
Sure. Okay. Let me address the audience first, then we can try to see whether we can get you and your face on. My name is Kamaru. I'm from Astro Awani. We've heard a lot of talks today at the first ever WITF.
For the video.
But this is about food, and food is very, very important. I would like to see what Pak Sandiaga or Sandi Uno said at the beginning, a few hours ago, where his concern was about the price of food. As we can understand, Indonesia is the largest nation, and that's an important issue. But I would draw attention to the fact that statistics is very clear. Every night, 800 million people, they go to bed very, very hungry because they cannot get food. And in the latest end of last month report by WFP and
There's no photo. No audio, no video.
More people will be facing acute hunger. Before COVID-19, already we're looking at 235 million people. So these are amazing, amazing statistics. But at this session today, for about 30 minutes plus, we will talk to three expert panelists who's going to give their views whether this pandemic right now is making us look at the global food crisis and what can we do about it. So first, I'd like to introduce Professor Syed Azam Ali, the CEO of Crops for the Future, a very, very interesting man, graduated in many things, but move on later to study about technology for crops. And I've come across your writings, I've been with you in interviews, very, very innovative thinking indeed, the problem for humanity. And then we have Ho Yu Ming. Ms. Ho Yu Ming is a very professionally certified accounts, but she has gone from this looking at accountancy and audit to managing the business of food, and a lot of great restaurants from KL that are very famous. She was on hand to manage them, but now we are proud that the famous Le Cordon Bleu 1895 started, is finally now in Malaysia a few years ago, and she played a big part, the general manager of Le Cordon Bleu Malaysia. And of course, we must have the policy maker, and His Excellency Ambassador Dr. Hamid Opoloyeru is a career diplomat and now with the Organization for Food Security. So I want to start straight away while we wait to get the technical things sorted out with the ambassador. Maybe Prof. Syed can give us a brief update with the pandemic, because hunger and acute hunger has always been an issue in the world. It's not about the world not producing enough food, but sometimes it's a lot more about accessibility, food security in terms of communities and group of people having access to safe and secure food. So where are we in that matter? And please link it to the things that you're doing at Crop of the Future.
Okay, is it?
Thank you, Cameron. The line is a bit fuzzy from you, but let me try and set up the scene, particularly focus on the business of this meeting. We know, of course, it's a global crisis, and we can't argue about who, why it's affecting different people. But if we just look at the Muslim world, We can call it, if you like, the straw that broke the camel's back. We knew that our existing business model and our economic system was not fit for purpose, but we carried on. What we're now seeing, of course, is, if you like, it's our last chance to make peace with the planet. It's our last chance to sit down and say, how do we do it differently? And there's a great rush to get back to the shops and go, you know, back to the restaurants and things. We've heard very much about people feeling, you know, stuck in their houses. They want to get out again. But they shouldn't lose the big picture of what they need to think about as a future model, because the current model is not going to work. And I take the Muslim world particularly because I think there's 57 member states of the OIC. Every single one of them is on the front line of climate change, just by its geography. You know, Iceland is not a Muslim country. So all countries in the Muslim world are going to experience, and we can argue about the numbers, but it's not going to meet the Paris Agreement of 1.5. It's closer to 3.8. So if I ask anybody sitting in their homes or offices now, do you want to live in a country in the Muslim world that's 3.8 degrees hotter? And of course, you might be able to turn the air conditioning on, but the plants outside can't, the animals outside can't. We have to completely rethink how we actually feed ourselves. Coming to feeding ourselves, and I think you touched on the point about malnutrition, people going hungry. We're searching for a vaccine for COVID, but we already have a vaccine for malnutrition. It's called food. And if we actually start from nutrition and malnutrition, it isn't just shortage of food, it's too much food, it's obesity, it's stunting, it's you know, malnutrition in every sense of the word in terms of micronutrient deficiencies, what we call hidden hunger. All those four are the biggest likely indicators, other than age, for COVID-19. 80%, I'm taking the US as an example, of course not a very good one, but 80% of conditions that make people vulnerable to COVID are actually food and nutrition related. You know, diabetes, hypertension, all the things we talk about in terms of obesity are actually prerequisites, if you like, or preconditions for this disaster that we're now facing. So we have to go back to health, and we have to go back to nourishment, and we have to get away from this addiction we have to calories. And I know with someone from the Cordon Bleu in the team, we have to look at food as cuisine and culture and celebration and all the things that we have forgotten. We now just think of food as something we fill ourselves with. We actually have to come back to the principles of food and nutrition and some of the forgotten foods, particularly in the Muslim world, that we have replaced with the fast food diets that we've now imported and become addicted to. If I just make one last point, which is we can't feed ourselves. The Muslim world can't feed itself. I can't think of one country in the Muslim world that is actually food sufficient, which means we're bringing food from somewhere else to feed ourselves. And those supply chains are vulnerable, the costs are going to go up, and we're more and more vulnerable if we don't look at agriculture as a priority for everything else, because nutrition has to come from land, land has to provide food, and everything we're now talking about is about improving the health and the immune system of people, because that is actually our best defense against COVID.
Okay, cool. This is a new normal. It's unprecedented. So I'm not going to follow what Zikri started and, you know, the previous moderator. We're not going to go one by one presenting 5 minutes since Prof has opened the door like that. So you can still put in your point. I'm going to make it more interactive in the sense that if I can get Ms. Ho Yu Ming to the point that Prof was saying, not just about availability of food, but the quality of nutrition. Our lifestyle, our diet was already suspect at best before pandemic. And now, but Prof was looking from getting new type of crops, you know, and stuff like that, what he does. But for you, you are at the other end, at the consumer end of the spectrum. So how do you see your industry, the real life pandemic situation? People can't dine, people can't go to have their favorite food. But at the same time, if this is the reset, how do we use this reset to influence cultural norms and also culinary norms? And over to you.
Thank you, Cam. Very, very vital what Prof Said have said. What we can do, we go back to artisan, All right. What is happening now is that we are being presented with food that is like all taken shortcuts. What is nutritious? What is good? It's back to basics. Remember how our grandmas have been cooking for us. All right. So that's where we need to take basic ingredients, handle it properly, and make it good to be nutritious to us. Plain vegetables. All right. For example, if you learn the technique of preservation, for example, like kimchi, sauerkraut, well, it's being taught in the school how to make it. This is very good probiotic. And also, these are some of the understanding of the artisan techniques coupled with just basic ingredients. You could actually come up with very nutritious food for ourselves. So the know-how is important. And I think the education aspect now to teach people the ingredients, this is what you get, this is what you can make use of it. But how can it be nutritious to me? For example, rice, okay, we are in Asia, staple. This is what we've been handed out. This is what we have been giving all the people on the street who are homeless, rice, okay? How can we make it nutritious? Okay, plain rice is full of carbo. But do you know that fermented rice is actually very good? You know, so these some of the things is an understanding and being able to teach. So it's really back to what food is basically in the artisan way. When ingredients are going to be scarce, all right? So the education of using what we have, cooking methods is important. In a hot climate like this, the way we cook rendang is going to preserve, you know, because it's cooked for a long time, slow cook, and even without the fridge, we can keep it in room temperature. So these are the things that we need to educate ourselves, educate everybody that in spite of this pandemic, we said, this is all the food we get. How can we make best use of it to stay alive, you know? So there is this going back to artisan, learning from our grandmother and so on.
I'd just like to, follow up with a little question on that. What's available, what's out there when we go out of our house, right? So this is where you're very good at, not only in building restaurants and operating it, but also marketing it. That marketing is what I'm getting at. Now with social distancing and the global supply chain disrupted, is this now an opportune time for Malaysia, for example, to innovate, starting from KL, where we change the availability of nutritious food, at least along one lane or one road in KL, or one specific area? Because right now, hygiene is very important. Yeah. Hygiene only of the food preparation, but to get to where the food is available. So let's say if DBKL can, ideally set out one lane or one small area in KL, and we can start with that first to see that this is where almost entirely new normal is being practiced, from the preparation of food, from the nutritious ingredients selected to social distancing and everything else.
Yeah, I mean, there is innovation, okay? We send food in even chill trucks or even warmers and all that. It's all there. So we can always set up something, all right, where the public can access. It can be pre-cooked, but if it's well transported, it can stay, cooked food can stay alive, so to say, for a few hours, all right, without the danger of being food poisoning and all that. So we can come up with innovative trucks, okay, to send all this even to rural areas from these people who cooked, and we collect and send it out. And so it can be chilled, it can be, in a temperature that's safe. So I think there's no qualms about that. We can deliver, as soon as possible.
I'll get back to Prof. comments later on that, because how many people know how many types of food, for example, we know rice, but if we don't want that, we go for brown rice. If we want to be healthier, we go for quinoa. But there might be other crops and restaurants and Le Cordon Bleu, for example, could introduce new ways and new things into our diet. But we have to go to the policy maker now. I would like to welcome His Excellency Ambassador Dr. Hamid Opeldo. I hope I pronounced your name right.
Okay.
Nigeria. But
yes.
Ambassador, we're changing the format a bit in the interest of time. So
Yeah.
it's not one by one presentation so much, but I'm following off from what Prof. Said has started. How do you look at the fact that it's not just about, and I would like to amend a bit the statistic I gave before, it's actually 130 million people acutely hungry every before COVID-19, but according to the UN, with COVID-19, 135 million more. That's 265 million people around the world faced with acute hunger. And according to the Executive Director of World Food Programme, 821 million people go to bed hungry every night. So from a policy perspective, and you can influence the policy at OIC, can OIC countries, for example, forget about protecting their borders in terms of food supply chain, but think of the whole OIC as a community and see how we can complement and take care of the weakest link in our communities. Ambassador.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Ella, for inviting us. Of course, right here in Kazakhstan, we represent the voice of the Muslim world, the area of food security. Actually, we are actually a child of circumstance. We were actually born after, due to the near starvation that actually happened in 2008. Remember, there was the people crisis, which was the financial food crisis that happened. And that was when the OIC member states look at things and say, look, we have to think global when it comes to food, but we also have to act regionally. So our regional action is what we are actually looking at now. And the OIC, in creating a food security outfit, sees some of the opportunities that can accrue to member countries when they act in a regional manner. So in this case, if you are talking about 100 and something million hungry people, we have 67 point something million of that number falling in our area. That means we are more of a South-South cooperation architecture. And we believe that these opportunities, this crisis actually can provide the opportunities that is required for us to leapfrog the stages of underdevelopment in the area of food. And I agree with the lead from the crops of the future. We have to start thinking now about resilience and about looking for new varieties of crops and see some initiatives that we can bring in, using technology and using other innovative ways. So the OIC, in creating this organization, thinks that we have to scale up all and put all the thinking caps, ensure that we bring in all our capacities in the area. And of course, we are talking about corporate technology, we are talking about bringing in some of the values, and we are talking about all the systems that we are thinking about. So we are thinking really, we are going in a very innovative manner to see that we scale up food production, not only the production itself, but also the nutrition security. And not only that, also to ensure that we reduce the number of stunted growth, number of undernourished people, which actually are very considerable in our region.
Sorry, if I can go to you, taking from what Ambassador said, I would like to map it to the realities of the region, for example. In OIC, the billions of barrels of oil being produced bring in billions, if not trillions of US dollars. But investment into food production, for example, we haven't seen that kind of solidarity. When there was a blockade against Qatar, for example, more than 90% of Qatar's food production needed to be imported. But in just over 2 years, or a little bit over 2 years, Qatar has almost negate that threat of food security, 100% being able to depend on themselves with certain adjustment, but also exporting it out. So it's not for the lack of technology, maybe a lack of political will and strategic thinking, coupled to, but even if Qatar had solved that problem, I'm not sure whether they are really looking at diversifying the crops or doing it in a new way that is what you are talking about. So how do we ensure political will, Prof. Syed?
I wish I could answer that, but let me try. Let me set out what is the opportunity. Here we are in the Muslim world with right here in the humid tropics, we're the second richest source of biodiversity on the planet after the Amazon. So that's a resource, 7,000 crops, many from this tropical region. We've got the tallest and highest mountains in the world in Pakistan. We've got the deserts, we've got Kazakhstan. We've heard about the opportunity, but the diversity of land and ecological resources we've got, on top of which we have plants and of course marine biodiversity, that is a treasure trove. And if we don't use that, we must really ask very serious questions why we can't feed ourselves. Qatar, of course, is a great example. Necessity drove agriculture, because I was there when it was 99% imported food because it was cheaper. When it can't be cheaper because you can't get it, you grow it. Here's our opportunity. The second point I would make is our natural resources. You mentioned fossil fuel. What about solar? What about geothermal? What about renewables that we haven't even tapped into? But the land bank we've got for these sorts of renewable energy sources with innovation, incredible. And the third point I would make is our demographic against most other communities. Muslim world is young, and we've got a young population that is eager for change. And here's an opportunity to make agriculture the most attractive industry for the next generation. Agri-tech, startups, all the things we talked about earlier on, digitalization. These are innovations that can drive interest in agriculture, because our farmers are getting older and there is very little to attract the next generation to agriculture. And that's why we're at that critical stage now, that we really have to rethink how we feed ourselves and how we actually build systems that are going to be resilient for the next generation.
Prof. Syed, you actually have already answered the political will question without saying it. From what I gather from what you have said, is actually listening to the facts and the science of things, looking at what's around us, looking at what's needed. But just like the pandemic, it's not that easy to follow the facts and science, even for the most powerful nation on earth. So I'm just going to tease you a bit before I go to Yu Ming here. When I look before pandemic, when we look at fisheries, for example, the problem that we have is our consumption is too high for the fishes to replenish naturally. But that's also caused because we're only selecting a few species of fish. In Malaysia, for example, we know ikan kembung, ikan merah, snapper, all these things only when there are many, many more that we can look at. And same thing for crops. Apart from rice, we are hard-pressed to name any other crop apart from maybe wheat that we take in terms of white bread or brown bread or whatever it is. So what will be your suggestion to push out the facts and science for, just like pandemic, for the political leadership to govern?
I think people have to change their attitude to food and now start looking at nutrition instead of calories, and they have to start looking at their own foods and cultures, and they have to start looking at these ingredients which previously they discarded because they were seen as poor people's crops or underutilized, therefore they didn't really have to buy them. And when we've only got 3 crops making more than 60% of the world's food, we have some serious questions to ask about why we ignore the other 7,000. If we change culture, and you know the diversity of cuisines that we have across the whole of the Muslim world, and we change the dynamic of what makes people want to eat food, and it isn't just filling themselves anymore, we have a huge opportunity to actually change the mindset, and that will change political will, because consumers will demand nutritious, better, locally sourced, healthier, and safer food.
Prof, we'll get back to whether governments will change their minds and policymakers to ambassador a bit later. I would like to cross that to Yu Ming, because the diversity of our culinary experience. Right now, maybe we're just mainly following what has been given to us from the previous generation. But with climate change and now pandemic, Yu Ming, you have brilliantly marketed a lot of great culinary choices for consumers around. So taking what Professor Syed said, looking at the other 7,000 species or availability of raw materials in that sense, don't you think it's more of, rather than seeing it as a top to bottom push down, it's actually an opportunity to innovate the dishes or the culinary choices and items?
Yes, absolutely. No denying of that. I mean, like you say, the poor man's food have now becomes the rich man's diet, okay? Even like morels and all that, people can pick in the gardens before and just eat it, even spinach. Yeah, like kangkong, it's all very upgraded now version. So with the techniques and all that, yes, we can definitely upgrade the food into different style using different ingredients as well. But I think it's back to the community. Okay, I want to change a little bit to what we say is community helps community. All right, and I've been exposed to a person who changes the community to work on their own farm, the whole family of it, all right? And they do it on a social enterprising basis, yeah, not free for all. So for us in the urban jungle, okay, we may live in condominiums and houses and so on. We, in our own gated community, we can actually grow enough vegetables for ourselves, even more for other people. We can start that. Even vertical gardens can be happening in China when they build their condominiums. So if communities were to come together to grow vegetables for our own selves, and with the excess, we can even give away or share. I think that's how we can start as a social enterprise. You know, I mean, yes, we can if you want to cover a cost, or we can donate, and then with that we can innovate. With technology now, crop grows faster. It doesn't. Papayas don't need to grow high to have the fruits. You know, all these innovation can come in. So with this, I think communities should form places of themselves to grow crops, the abundance to give it away, to sell it away. If everybody starts doing that, I think Philippines has been helping the poor communities like this to give wages to the children and the father's mother to farm the field, all right, and then sell the crops. So I think we can start from there. Things like this.
You mean out of sight is out of mind? So when we were forced to not get out of our houses and only go online, we noticed that our list of menus to choose from was very, very limited. How do we turn that now to what you say, so that at least when we go online, we see all these things that Prof is advocating and what you are saying?
Yeah, I mean, yes, wonderful. But then when I see all this menu, I mean, and then I want to cook, or I can get some ingredients and say I need to add on something. And I don't even have a serai, you know, a lemongrass in my garden. Then I say, oh, I need to plant that actually. You know, so this is also an awareness for people to say the basic needs, even an onion, all that can be planted. And then we can enhance this and not spend and then save that, you know. Of course, through innovation, yeah, the luxury of food. But at the end of the day, take it or leave it, when we go for our delivery orders, we're ordering basic food. Basic food.
Ambassador Dr. Hamid, it's good to want the community to change, and when community changes, then it will force political will and governance. But if it goes together with political will and governance, it's even better. So do you see, at least within the OIC communities, that we can work together, not looking at only our own community, but solving this problem as an ummah? For example, Indonesia, the biggest Muslim nation, but they have issues because inequality across their geographic region and socio-economic status. At the same time, there's a lot of fund and capital in the West Asia or Middle East. And how do you think your organization can play a role to bridge this inequality at least?
Yeah, thank you very much. I think, well, just going back to the issue of political will, the political will is actually there. And that is why I told you that this organization was created with complete unanimity of all the member states. Despite whatever political differences, you will see that the performance of the OIC countries is based actually on the antecedents. If you look at the opportunities, for example, we are talking of a whole region that represents 1.6 billion of humanity, about 25% of humanity, and then producing a GDP of something less than 10%. We believe that we have to scale up. And then number two, we look at the fact that OIC countries, they have complementarities. I mean, they have countries that are fuel exporting countries, middle income countries. We also have, of course, a good number, a fair share of least developed countries. And these least developed countries also, they are land rich, call them land rich countries. There are resource poor and land rich countries, and there are resource rich and land poor. So we believe that we can bring all these together to get a win-win situation among the countries. And I believe also that if you look at the fact that even in agricultural production, the OIC countries also rank more than 25% of the world production. And the most important thing is to modernize, to change from traditional food production to something that is science and technology based. That is why we are looking at gene bank, for example. We are now in July. We are going to be having a workshop in the UAE on gene bank, where to bring about some of the awareness that we want to bring about, ensure that we have new varieties. And then we're looking at also water technologies. We're looking at how to increase the productivity in that area. And then of course, the quality itself. And then the accessibility also of our countries to food. And also on the demand side, we look at how to increase the wealth creation in OIC countries through trade. Now, recently with COVID, there has been some tendency for countries to want to look inward, to want to disrupt international trade. So the OIC has moved in very robustly to intercede with government not to stop exports of food to countries. That advocacy was well received, and so we think that the political will is working and is very active. I'm talking about food security reserve. We are also working on humanitarian humanitarian corridor on food security reserve. That will take care of the Qatar issue.
Sure. Unless there's a question popping up on the Q&A, which I don't see yet, I'm going to end with, for each of my panelists, one point on innovating and innovation during this COVID-19 as far as food supply chain and security is concerned. So maybe I'll start with Prof. Said.
This is a personal point, but if we sit down and look at, and I have to check it twice, the top 200 universities in the world, there's not one in a Muslim country. Okay. So when we talk about the evidence base, it's not our evidence, and we're not delivering anything because no one is asking the right questions, because they're taking the model from somewhere else. And if I say 23 international agricultural research institutes, that's my area, there are only 2 in Muslim countries, soon to be only 1. Now that is not acceptable. We can't expect to solve problems if we don't have the research infrastructure and the technology to develop innovation. So innovation has to start from what is the problem, how are we going to address it, and then how do we innovate, and then technology. Technology comes last, as was mentioned by Raphael earlier. Technology and digitalization is only a tool to answer the problem. What is the problem?
If I was in OIC, I would have said ouch to your point, Prof, but well taken. I'm going to go to you thing now. One thing, if you could, innovation-wise.
Yes. Okay.
Hold on, Ambassador. I'm giving you Ming first.
Sorry. Yeah. Okay. For me, it's really the innovation of making the basic food to be nutritious, and also the community to be participating. Because otherwise, food security is gone if you don't participate. It is not just for a few, but it's for everybody. Everybody
must come in. Correct.
Yes.
Ambassador, only 30 seconds, one innovation. We heard what Professor said, there's no R&D much, top 200 universities not in our community. So what do you think?
Thank you very much. I think what we are doing really is to mobilize all our research centers centers of excellence. We are creating strategic commodities, which are rice, wheat, and cassava in the to start with. And we are mobilizing all the centers of excellence to ensure that we come up with innovative ways of doing things in a more scientific and innovative manner. That is actually our,
Thank you
and
so
all
much.
our actions are actually geared towards that.
Okay, point taken. I will not sum up because those 3 key points of innovation that you all have given, I think sums it up very, very well. Thank you so much, Professor Syed, always giving us the alternative to the current base. Thank you so much, Yume, and much good.
Thank you, Cam.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Where you are after CMCO, but I see on my screen a lot of luminaries already coming in. There are 2 more sessions. Tasha Jamila is in. I saw her face. I can see Maria Bell. And okay, that's all. Please clap silently in your hearts.
Thank you.
Families.
Thank you very much.
We will beat COVID-19 with solidarity like this. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Okay. Thank you, Sheikh Hamaro Bahrain and the panelists for a very interesting session.